Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Backcourt Press. I am your co-host Hunter Mennick here with Zach Vinci. Say hello.
What's up, everyone?
It's been a minute. We've both been very busy with a lot of college things. Me personally, I've been very busy with finals and then rowing. My crew season's coming to an end this weekend, so that should be fun. I know Zach has been very busy at Syracuse with all of his finals and your final week of classes and everything. But you're finally home. I am still here in college, unfortunately. I'll be home in a week when we'll be able to actually start live streaming back from my home court as well, along with yours. But it's been a long time since we've done this, but we're back and we're ready. It's been probably the most exciting week of basketball that we could have picked up on. So it's going to be a really fun podcast today.
Yep. It's been a fun week. I mean, you just look at the first games of every series, 7 out of 8 of them were within 11 points. And that tells you everything. I mean, the games yesterday weren't great, but still, it's been exciting so far. I'd love to see it.
Exactly. And before we get started, make sure to follow us, of course, however you're watching us here, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube or Twitch now that we actually do that. So that's pretty cool. Make sure to let me know where you're watching us. And don't be afraid to follow our Instagram page. We've been keeping that up pretty much daily with a couple whiffs in there. But we're having a really, really good time posting on our Instagram page. And Zach just got done with one of his series. But with playoff basketball right it's happening as we speak, our Instagram page is popping off more than ever. So be sure to follow us on Backcourt Press on Instagram. And, of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel.
I'll be posting about the greatest NBA franchise of all time later, Sacramento Kings.
Oh, my. We cannot go a podcast without making fun of the Sacramento Kings, as it makes sense because how bad are they? Are probably the second worst franchise in NBA history, except the worst is looking upwards, and the Kings are still terrible.
Yes.
So unless you have any last words, let's get right started into talking about the end of the regular season.
I'm ready. Let's go.
So we saw a crazy end of the regular season. We saw a lot of injuries go down. A couple of them that I don't think we end up mentioning was we never really got to talk about LeBron and AD truly going down and how much it affected that end of the season. We could also talk about Jamal Murray's injury and how much that affects the Denver Nuggets playoff run, because without him, it seems like they went from a championship contending team to possibly not even making it out of the first round. Yep. And we got guys like Donovan Mitchell getting injured to end the season. I know there's many more that are just blanking off the top of my head, including the Nets' big three, possibly. So if you want to talk about injuries and how you think that affected the end of the season, go right ahead.
Honestly, it doesn't really bother me, the injuries at this point. I think most guys are getting back healthy. You got to miss time. The regular season's the regular season. And as I always say, the last 20 to 30 games of the regular season aren't really that interesting. I really don't care about the last 20 to 30 games of the regular season. At that point, I'm in playoff mode. Once we're past the All-Star break, 50, 60 games in, I'm just ready for the playoffs to start. So I didn't really mind injuries. Yeah, it sucks, whatever. But I was ready to get to playoff basketball. I'm glad all these guys are getting back healthy now. Hopefully, they apparently Spida Mitchell will be ready for sure game 2, which I'm hype about because gets Utah back at full strength, which is very nice. And then Anthony Davis and LeBron at full strength. Man, I just can't get over LeBron's excuses.
Yeah, I mean, when he said he'll never be 100% the rest of his NBA career, I mean, that's just – and then, it might have been a little bit of the media play going on him due to the fact he called Steph Curry the MVP just so then he could beat him, says that I'm not at 100%. So then when he comes out of the first round, I did it, not at 100%. It's all media tactics, especially with him going down after getting poked in the eye for 80 seconds. I mean, maybe that's just me, but something like that was a little bit absurd. But going back to the end of the regular season, I think it was something interesting that they did. You said by about 50, 60 games into the league, you're really just thinking playoff mode. But this year, we got to see 21 to 22 teams pretty much competing until the very last game in the NBA season to try and clinch that play-in spot. allowing them to have a chance to make the playoffs. And we actually saw the play-in tournament make a difference in the playoffs. Unfortunately, it had to be my Golden State Warriors going down to the Memphis Grizzlies in a game that the Warriors 100%, everyone except for Stephen Curry, did not deserve to win that game. And everyone in Memphis stood up in their own way. And Memphis truly did deserve that win, especially after beating San Antonio, a team that both of us were pretty high on. We didn't think that they could beat Memphis, but with Memphis going by the Warriors and the Spurs, I want to talk a little bit about how you think the play-in tournament affects the end of the regular season.
I'm not a big fan of it, honestly. I think when the play-in tournament got there, I think the 8 best teams in the East and the West were the 8 teams in the playoffs. So, to me, there was no reason for the play-in tournament. Sure, Memphis beat Golden State. Did we really want to see Memphis in the playoffs over Golden State? I don't think so.
No.
I think the general NBA fan base would rather watch Stephen Curry play. Good for Memphis. I like Memphis a lot. I like John Morant. I like Jonas Valanciunas. But the 8 best teams made it at the end of the regular season. The Indiana Pacers and the Charlotte Hornets had zero business even contending for the playoffs. I mean, these were teams that were under 500. They weren't going anywhere. There was literally no reason for them to have to play into the playoffs because they weren't going to do anything once they were in the playoffs. So that's why, to me, the play-in tournament just not a big deal. I'm not a big fan of it. I think that it's about making the playoffs. There should be 8 teams that make the playoffs. I think it's the same thing that happened in like the MLB last year when they expanded it to 8 teams instead of the usual 5 format. And exactly what happened. The 6 teams who made it in the MLB that weren't supposed to in a normal season were all knocked out early. It just shows you like you don't need all these extra teams. 16, that's it. That's what it should stay at.
Exactly. I understand it for the bubble last season where, we had that big break in the NBA. They came back, only played 8. They only played 8 games of the rest of the regular season really quickly. My buddy William Hoffman said Washington in 4, be ready, even though they already lost the first game. So that is now impossible. But I know Will's just taking a shot at Zach's 76ers.
We have a Westbrook fan in the comments.
Oh boy, your favorite according to the comments that have been going on our Instagram page. A quick shout out to Backcourt Press on Instagram because, oh my God, that stuff's pretty funny. All the comments. We will get to talking about the Wizards in a little bit, but with the play-in tournament, I understand what you're saying when it comes to like not really thinking. I completely agree. I think pretty much everyone except for Memphis fans wanted to see Golden State in the playoffs and play Utah week 1, just for the pure fact that Stephen Curry had already beaten Phoenix and Utah in back-to-back games to end the regular season. And I say Stephen Curry because it was Stephen Curry, period. And I would have loved to see him compete in a 7-game series, especially on how he was now technically an MVP caliber, a top 3 in MVP voting at just the 9 seed.
And Steph beat the Grizzlies to get into the playoffs at the end of the regular season. Like, they won that game already. Memphis shouldn't have gotten a rematch.
Exactly.
I'm not a big fan of it.
It's something that the NBA will probably have to look into for up and coming years. I completely understand it the year that the bubble was implemented, more basketball for fans to watch and get right back into it. But at the same time, with the play-in tournament, I don't think it should have been implemented this season, even with the shortened season, due to the fact that those teams played 72 games. The Warriors played 72 games, beat Memphis to get into the playoffs, and then were forced to lose to the Lakers, which, no offense, the Warriors had no business being in that game if we're talking based off of talent. It was just a pure, incredible display of Andrew Wiggins playing like he is not a complete trash can, and Draymond Green playing his normal game, along with, Stephen Curry being the Stephen Curry he was this season. In my opinion, the best player in the NBA, talent-wise. I think that's a fair argument.
Yeah.
Except Jokic should win MVP. Unfortunately, as a Warriors fan, I will admit Jokic still had the better season.
Here's my side note. Jokic had a great season, but he sure as hell doesn't win MVP if 5 players don't get injured. Like Curry, LeBron, Embiid, Giannis, like Harden, all those guys are winning MVP over Jokic if they don't get hurt. Like, there's one stat that matters for Jokic winning MVP this year, and it's the fact that he played 72 games. That is the only stat that matters. And the fact that none of these other guys played 60-something games, and that's what keeps them from getting it over Jokic. Good for Jokic and all, but to me, this is probably the least impressive MVP of the last 10, 15 years, just because so many injuries prevented so many guys from competing at the award. If Embiid plays 70 games, Embiid gets it.
I agree.
If Curry plays 72 games and the Warriors are the 5 seed like they would have been in terms of on pace for how many wins they would have gotten, Curry would have gotten it. If LeBron didn't miss half the season, he could have gotten it. He was in the running. Giannis was incredible, and then he missed 15 games. James Harden was in the running before he missed about 25, 30 games. Good for Jokic, but not super impressed.
Exactly. So now moving on from awards and the end of the regular season, including the play-in, we saw the Wizards lose to Boston due to Jason Tatum's 50-point game, which gave Tatum a free pass to get swept in the first round by the Brooklyn Nets. And then we see the Wizards beating the Pacers after the Pacers absolutely annihilated the Hornets, which was kind of a funny game if you really watched it, because you would never expect the Pacers to be the team to put up 140-plus points, and they did, showing how bad Charlotte really is without their, in my opinion, number one player on that team in Gordon Hayward. And then we saw the Wizards come out, and Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook had a good game and beat the Indiana Pacers to face the Philadelphia 76ers. And then obviously everyone knows what happened out west. Everyone in the NBA and their family watched that Lakers-Warriors game, as it was probably the best outcome that the NBA could have gotten when it comes to making money off of a playing game. And it came down to LeBron James hitting a fadeaway 37-foot shot to end the game, which was, very hard for me to watch because, everyone everyone knew it was going in the second it left his fingers because it's LeBron James. But the defense that was played at that last minute of the game was very, very good. So what do you have to say about the playing games specifically?
They were entertaining. But at this point, I feel like most of them are old news. I'm in playoff mode at this point. But no, watching that Lakers-Warriors game was fun. It was interesting. In the end, I don't think it had I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. I don't think that the stakes of the game were high enough for me to really be invested in it as much as a playoff game, because I knew that whoever lost would still have another chance to keep going. So the stakes weren't as high as they could have been, or as many probably thought they were, but it was still an enjoyable game. Watching Steph Curry and LeBron James on the biggest stage of basketball is always an entertaining treat. And yeah, that's all I got.
Exactly. No, I think for me, being a fan of one of those two teams, I felt like I was in playoff mode. Just the game itself, it felt like a playoff game, and we haven't seen LeBron and Curry go at it now in what seems like a year. It seems like 5 years, even though it's really just been 1 year since Klay Thompson got injured and the Warriors' downfall began. But at the same time, it was a really good atmosphere, in my opinion. Just a really good way to kick off playoff basketball. I wouldn't say it was exactly like playoff basketball, but I don't think there was a better way to kick it off.
Well,
continue.
I was gonna say it's interesting, and I want to hear your take on this. That they're not counting these statistics for the regular season or the playoffs. It's kind of in a little niche of a season. So I don't know, how do you feel about that?
Now, the thing is, did they count last year when they had those 8 games in the bubble? Were those technically counted as regular season stats?
Yes.
Because I remember there was the bubble MVP, which was Devin Booker and then TJ Warren.
It was still counted as the regular season stats, I remember.
Interesting. To me, it's weird to say that it shouldn't be. I don't think it should be regular season, but there's only 16 teams to make the postseason. But they need to somehow count them. You know what I mean? There's they can't just have empty stat lines. They have to be counted as something for it. But I don't think it should be regular season or postseason due to the fact that, to me, 16 teams postseason and 30 teams regular. So I don't know.
Yeah, I say if you're going to continue the play-in tournament, I would say you make it its own thing, and it's just play-in tournament stats for the future. But if this is a 1 or 2 time thing or whatever, just count it as playoff stats. Come on,
you have to just put them somewhere.
Yeah.
Exactly. My dad was saying, makes no sense. You need to count stats. He thinks they should be as playoff stats. I think this year, if they were going to do it, it should be as playoff stats, since it is postseason, in my opinion. But at the same time, they just really messed up by not including those stats anywhere.
Yeah, where does Jason Tatum's 50-point game go? Just in the middle of
Exactly. It's not in the Celtics history books now as one of the players to
floating,
score 50.
just floating out there. Disappointing.
Exactly. So now we move into our playoff mode, playoff basketball. And if you thought the Lakers Warriors game kicked off playoff basketball, you were heavily mistaken because the first game of playoffs was an absolute roller coaster of a game. We saw the Miami Heat go into Milwaukee and play a terrible game, while Milwaukee also played a pretty bad game. And going into overtime, you would expect both teams to put up more than 110 points, but neither ended up doing it. Very heavily defensive game. We saw an incredible game from Duncan Robinson, but we saw really the true impact of Drew Holiday and the impact he's going to have on that Milwaukee team to come. But in the end, it was Chris Middleton, who's been known to not step up as much in the playoffs, hit a game-winning shot in overtime to send the Bucks to have the Bucks lead 1-0 against the Miami Heat. I know you watched a lot of this game. You were very high on the Miami Heat last year. I know you have some different opinions on them this year. So, what are your thoughts on this team and this series?
So my prediction in this series was Bucks in 5 originally. After game 1, I kept that prediction constant, Bucks in 5. After game 2, I'm still keeping that prediction constant, Bucks in 5. It was so good to see because last year I was all over the Heat bandwagon. You remember I predicted them to go to the championship last year, and it panned out, and I felt all smart. And then and this year I'm just not high on the Heat at all. I have the Bucks winning the championship this year. So complete turnaround from last year. And after watching that first game, the only thing I could think was, wow, these two teams suck. I was so underwhelmed by both teams. Neither one looked like a contender. Neither team could shoot the ball. Neither team was playing very good defense. It was rough, to say the least. But it was key that the Bucks came out on top because it showed that the Bucks had their worst game that I've seen them play in 20 games, and they still won. So to me, watching that, I was like, okay, I have enough confidence to say if the Bucks can play like that and win, they will continue to win this series and win these games. I think Miami will still maybe steal one, but we see at least in game 2 yesterday, Giannis was guarding Jimmy Butler, which is the biggest change from last year's series because Giannis faced a lot of criticism for not guarding Jimmy Butler last year and backing off of the best player on the team. He's doing it this year. Jimmy Butler's been terrible through 2 games. Giannis is really showing that he is the perennial superstar in this league. The addition of Drew Holiday was very key. Chris Middleton, Bucks leader in clutch scoring, hitting some big shots. This team is rolling right now, and I'm loving it.
Exactly. We saw those great young players. I mean, you mentioned we bring up Bryn Forbes, who had an absolutely incredible game. That second game just came out the gate, torching hot. But really, man, Drew Holiday is such a great player for this team. The perimeter defense he brings along with, he could just be on the court and not have a single step, and he will impact that game more than most of the other players will. And I think that addition really puts Milwaukee over the top. I know you said you have them going all the way to the championship. I have them going pretty far as well. I think that to me, that series between them and Brooklyn, if and when it ends up happening, is going to be pretty much an NBA final series if you really watch it very closely. But this Milwaukee team is going to be hard to beat now, as long as Mike Budenholzer cannot choke in the first or second round like he's been known to do, because I don't know if he's the coach for the future of this team. But I wanted to know your thoughts on Mike Budenholzer and if you think that they can win with him as the coach.
If they don't make the Eastern Conference Finals, he's fired, guarantee.
100%.
If they lose this series or the one to Brooklyn, they could take Brooklyn to 7 games and lose on a buzzer beater in overtime in Game 7, and Coach Bud will still get fired. They need to make the Eastern Conference Finals. It's the same things as last year. You look at, I'm watching Game 1, and Giannis checks out of the game for the first time with 7 minutes left in the first quarter. Like, he is your best player. He shouldn't be coming out that early in the game. And then for some reason in Game 2, Giannis is still in the game with 8 minutes left when the Bucks are ahead by 35. So I'm never going to understand his rotations. I'm never going to understand why he plays certain guys when. But honestly, I don't think that he's going to have the impact on this team. I'm personally don't think coaching is very important in the NBA. I don't think Budenholzer's impact on this team. I don't think it's going to make a big difference. What he does. I mean, as we've seen, out of the last 6 champions, 4 of them have had first-year head coaches. Like you don't need a guy who's been around the block for a while, and like it's not a big deal in my opinion. I think as long as Giannis is playing to his absolute peak, Drew Holiday is doing what he does. Hold on a second. And as long as Chris Middleton's hitting those clutch shots, it's not going to matter what Coach Budenholzer does.
No, I completely agree with that. We've seen, Steve Kerr came into the league and was able to coach Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant right out the gates, and just absolutely be one of the coach of the years. Even though I don't think his coaching really made that big of a difference, his coaching testament really came in these past couple of years when Kevin Durant ended up losing, Klay Thompson goes down. So I think as long as Mike Budenholzer doesn't do anything crazy wrong, I think that they do have a chance to win the finals. But that right now with him is a big what if, because of the fact that we haven't in the past couple of years we've seen his rotations be a little bit rough, like you were mentioning. I mean, Giannis in when they're up by 35 in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's just Derrick Rose 2.0 with Tom Thibodeau all over again. So let's pray to God that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, exactly. And I totally forgot what I was going to say. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's our coverage of that first. I know you have.
I got it.
Continue.
Speak one more thing on the coaching thing before we move on to the next series. Everyone was praising Eric Spoelstra last year, right? People calling him a top 2-3 coach in the NBA, all of this because he led them to the finals. Right, this year he comes back with a similar yet different roster, same stars, but a lot of different role players, and they're not even going to make it out of the first round. Like, it just shows you, Spoelstra, I don't think had a very big impact on that team. I think it was Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo playing incredible with a great supporting cast around them. Now, you take away a lot of that great supporting cast, you lose Kelly Olynyk, you lose Jay Crowder, you lose Myers Leonard, all of these guys, and it's just a big loss for the Heat, and I think if they had their same roster as last year, they'd be putting up a better fight than right now.
I mean, yeah, Trevor Ariza, we've seen that in the first couple games. He's played awful for this team. He just looks like he's running up and down the court as a 35-year-old shooting guard playing power forward. And I mean, we I don't know if everyone watching this knows this, but our opinion on their starting point guard so far this season, Kendrick Nunn. We are very, very not high on Kendrick Nunn. He is a shot chucker, not a shot maker. That's the best way to put Kendrick Nunn's game. So
that's the best way to put it. Goran Dragic is 3 times as good and should be in the game twice as much. Kendrick Nunn sucks. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So if we're going to go in order of Saturday the 22nd games, we might as well move on to the youngest and future star of the NBA defeating one of your favorite players in Kawhi Leonard, and that young star is Luka Doncic, putting up a 31, 10, and 11 game and making guys like Dorian Finney-Smith and Tim Hardaway look like Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson out there, because the open looks that these guys were getting, it was impossible to miss. Yet the only issue I had with
it wasn't even open looks. They were hitting some of the toughest shit I have ever seen. Like Tim Hardaway Jr. was playing like he was Curry. I don't understand it. Go ahead.
And yet, the biggest what if I have about this series, Paul George had 23 points and actually was not that inefficient. He shot above 40% from the field. Yet people are still going to say he had one of the worst games of his career because that's playoff pandemic P for you. But to me, it's very interesting about this series is the big man rotations that the Clippers have. They only played Serge Ibaka, who just a year or two ago was such a huge part of a championship run in Toronto, being that shot blocker and defensive anchor. They only played him 13 minutes. Zubac got most of the center minutes, and although he's a very efficient center, I would say, in the paint, his defensive presence is, I'd say it's above average, but nowhere near what they kind of need in the paint. But the thing is, I don't know how much it's going to matter when you have a 7'3" shooting guard just chucking up threes and not making them in Kristaps Porzingis. I am a huge non-believer in Kristaps, and I just don't think he's going to be the second star next to Luka for years to come. But the Mavericks ended up coming out of this game while Kristaps shot 4 for 13 from the field and only had 14 points in 36 minutes. this is such a weird series to predict. I actually had the Clippers in 5. I've changed it to 6 now. I do think Kawhi and Paul George are going to come back in this series. I don't think Luka's surrounding cast will continue this. But what are your thoughts on both the teams, and do you think either of them can truly be championship contenders?
Well, I'm about to contradict myself, so be ready for this. It's kind of funny.
Boy.
It's kind of funny how I'm more nervous about this series than I am about my own team series. Like, that's how much I love Kawhi Leonard. Like, I am more worried about seeing him lose in the first round than seeing my own team lose in the first round. But as I say that, I'm going to contradict myself and say I'm actually not that worried for the Clippers. You watched that game 1, and it ended as a 10-point game, but with a minute and a half left, it was a 3-point game. It was neck and neck the whole way. And you just look at the performances, all right? Luka and Kawhi both played outstanding. Both of them playing peak basketball, both in playoff forms. That's what you're going to see all the time. But then you look at everyone else. The Clippers supporting cast was terrible. Terrible. I mean, Marcus Morris couldn't shoot the ball. Reggie Jackson couldn't shoot the ball. Beverly actually played decent. I'll give him that. Paul George was horrible in the first half, 1 for 7 from the field.
First half, terrible.
Had a great second half, but if he puts together 2 halves, the Clippers win this game. The Clippers shot the highest 3-point percentage in the league this year, and out of the 16 teams that played in the playoffs so far, they had the second worst 3-point shooting percentage in the game 1, just behind the Utah Jazz, who are also a top 3 3-point shooting team, which crazy to me.
Makes no sense.
Crazy to me, but I think there's no way that the Clippers will continue to shoot like this. I think it's going to be a very Milwaukee Bucks kind of thing. They're going to come out in game 2, and they're just going to annihilate the Mavericks. I think they're going to shoot the ball really well, come out, win by 20. No way Dorian Finney-Smith and Tim Hardaway Jr. are going to keep shooting this well. Much props to Luka Doncic. One thing I want to mention about him is he only had 1 point in the entire fourth quarter, and they extended their lead from like 1 to 10 points at the end of that game. And he only scored 1 point. He didn't even have a field goal. And that's just off of his drawing doubles and his playmaking. And which is why I truly believe Luka Doncic is probably the best playmaker in the NBA right now. Right up there with LeBron and Trae Young. And I mean, it's incredible.
CP3.
I think he's ahead of CP3 right now. I mean, CP3 is up there, but I mean, Luka is the way he creates space, draws doubles. Only Curry draws doubles the way Luka does. He's the only player who does that. And I think with Luka's playmaking, if he can continue to get those guys open, the Mavericks are going to have a chance. That said, the Clippers' rotational defense was actually pretty good out of all the double teams, and they were not getting open shots. They were making contested shots. So that's not something that I think is going to happen all series. I think at some point Hardaway's going to get cold. At some point Brunson's going to get cold. And by the way, Jalen Brunson, another guy I really like, really underrated player. But in the end, I think once the Clippers guys start shooting well and the Mavericks guys come back down to earth, I think the Clippers win 4 of the next 5 in this series.
Wow, that's a bold take. I mean, props to, you were mentioning the double teams. Luka Doncic, just by his pacing, him and Nikola Jokic, I think are really the only 2 players in the NBA who can just absolutely control the game due to their pacing and how they just absolutely control the game. The slowness that Luka plays with, even his jump shot. I mean, he's like a younger and more efficient Kyle Anderson with how slow and he is. So I had to bring that up because I know we love Kyle Anderson around here. But Luka, his playmaking, his ability to find open players, his ability to just make people more confident in the way that they shoot the ball. You can see that when someone gets the pass from Luka Doncic, they feel the need to shoot the ball because that's just how they play the game. And if the Mavericks can continue hitting shots, they probably will come out on top of the series. Now, we're heavily relying on the guys that we mentioned that to stay hot when they probably won't because that's how the NBA is. But who knows? I mean, if Luka Doncic is running this team, they could possibly go all the way to the championship with Luka doing Luka type things. So we'll see what ends up happening. But I think this team, they need a couple more efficient players to actually compete with the Clippers.
Luka Doncic is on a team with 0 stars besides himself. And say what you want about Kristaps Porzingis, he is not a star.
Not a star.
He's averaging 20 and 8 on average efficiency, but can't play defense for his life. And it has not been taking the best shot selection in the playoffs so far. So I digress.
Exactly.
Zero all-star caliber players on his team. And he has them as a top 5 team in a very competitive Western Conference, beating a top 5 team in the NBA in a playoff series right now. What is this guy going to do when he has talent around him?
Once he gets that second superstar, it's over.
If Luka in his career plays with a top 10 or 15 player, doesn't matter who it is, that's a championship winning team. He is very much like Michael Jordan, where he is going to carry a team as far as he can by himself. Probably not going to win that much, but once he gets his Scottie Pippen, he just needs that one piece, one guy who can help him relieve the load a little bit, and he's going to start winning championships. I mean, he has that level of talent. I'm so excited for that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at a series like Jordan in '88, where he's just having such an incredible individual season, yet the team itself can't win.
Yeah.
Now, my dad with the bold prediction down here, Dallas will win this series. I think you're a little too high on those role players. I think it's really going to come down to the role players. But hey, I mean, Marcus Morris and these Clipper players keep not playing well. We could very well see the first upset of the playoffs.
Okay, here's a question for you, and we'll talk about this series in a little bit. So if you want to hold on it, that's fine. Who do you think has a better chance to hold on and win their series, Dallas or Phoenix?
Phoenix.
I agree.
The only reason I said I think Phoenix is a more complete team.
Yeah.
They have Chris Paul compared to last year. And we saw in the first game, DeAndre Ayton play with the most energy that he ever has. We'll come back to that series in a little bit because that's probably the series we'll end on because it's such a fun series to talk about.
Yep.
And it's going to probably go 7 and have like the best media viewership out there. But no, that series is going to be really fun. But if we're going to move on to the next series, move on from Luka Doncic and Kawhi Leonard, the Nets defeated the Boston Celtics on the third game on the 22nd by 11 points. We saw James Harden have a near triple-double, and we saw the Celtics have a good game, I'd say, for the players that they have, due to the fact that Jaylen Brown's out. Kemba Walker actually stepped up and had a decent game. We saw mainly the bench and young players actually step up a lot. I know I'm looking over at the stat sheet. Robert Williams had 11 points and 9 rebounds in just 23 minutes. 9 blocks, which is an absolutely crazy stat. Now we have a Twitch viewer saying Celtics in 6. I hate to mistake you, but you're probably wrong on the team and the series length because of the fact that the Nets will most likely be sweeping the Boston Celtics if I had to make my bold prediction. But
bold?
Yeah, but it's not even a bold prediction. But I wanted to know what your thoughts are. I know we all expected Brooklyn. I mean, I believe the Nets came out with their big three, and the big three put up 82 points, which they only needed 12 more points of help to win that game. I mean, Kevin Durant looked like Kevin Durant, except for beyond the arc. He shot 1 for 8 from beyond the arc, which is something we haven't seen since it seems like his rookie year. But with the big three combining for 82, and the defense actually playing pretty solid against the Boston Celtics. One, are you worried about the Brooklyn Nets at all? Not in this series, but in upcoming series. Is there anything that bothered you? And then I want to talk a little bit about the Boston Celtics and how they could possibly end up staying in the series.
If anything, that game made me like Brooklyn a lot more because they played bad. Like they did not have a good game, and they won by double digits. I mean, this series is over. This series, Boston will not come within single digits in a single game this year. There's my Chuck's guarantee right there, right? Boston does not come within single digits in a final score in the rest of the series. Jason Tatum, outstanding. I'm not even going to complain about Jason Tatum. I know he didn't shoot very well in that game, but they were also double teaming him every single time down the floor. He couldn't get anything. He couldn't get anything open, especially with Durant in his face, which was a tough matchup for him. Tatum's going to have his time. He's a superstar. He's a stud. He's going to be a top 10 player very, very soon in this league. And that's coming from a Sixers fan. But this series is over, dude. This series is over. It doesn't matter.
Everyone knows it.
Tatum could drop 50 tomorrow, and the Nets are still going to win. Durant was incredibly inefficient, which is not like Durant at all. Still dropped over 30. Still won the game. My favorite thing about this is, this is only my second time watching all three of them on the floor together. Kyrie, Harden, and Durant. I watched one of the regular season games earlier, and the thing that's funniest to me is James Harden has the ball in his hands just as much in Brooklyn as he did in Houston, and that's
Exactly.
hilarious because he is their primary playmaker. He holds the ball for 80% of the possession, and Durant and Kyrie just play off ball and get open and just get open shots. And that's what I love about James Harden because his playmaking, he's another guy right up there in the Luka Doncic, LeBron, Trae Young talks. I mean, he gets guys so open and he draws so many doubles that when Durant and Kyrie are actually like shooting the ball well, and which they weren't doing, this team looks unbeatable. Like this might be a little preemptive to say, but I was saying to my dad yesterday when we were watching games that the winner of the Milwaukee-Brooklyn series in the second round, to me, I think, is going to win the NBA championship.
Mm-hmm. That's a fair prediction. I mean, we saw we saw James Harden only take 13 shot attempts and finish the game with 21 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists, and 4 steals.
Yep.
And I mean, Kyrie Irving shot above 50%. Kevin Durant shot, I believe, around 40% from the field, which is inefficient for Kevin Durant. But it's just, yeah, the bench is too young alongside with the Boston Celtics when you're really looking at. I mean, every single guy, if I look at it, is under 25, except for Jabari Parker, who's, I mean, he's a very, very talented offensive player. I'll give him that. But he is terrible defensively. Anytime that someone looked in front of them and saw Jabari Parker, it looked like they just saw the basket and it was going in because Jabari Parker can't guard a parked car, and it was very obvious to see that. So, I completely agree with you. I think your guarantee with Chuck is not even like a bold take if someone were to say that. The Boston Celtics, if they come within 10 points, to me that's a win. Like that's how they have to look at this series. With Jaylen Brown, could a couple games be even? I probably still with Jaylen Brown have them getting swept. No offense, I think the games will be closer, but I don't see this Boston Celtics just matching up well with the Brooklyn Nets. And the Brooklyn Nets just seem way too dominant to lose this series.
Yeah, I agree completely. It just warms my heart knowing that the Celtics are probably going to get swept. It warms my heart.
Fair point. And now, moving on from that series, that is a very easy, predictable one. Now we're moving into one of the harder series to predict. The night game on the 22nd of May was the Damian Lillard versus Nikola Jokic show, and it was an incredible game. We saw the Portland Trailblazers in Game 1 defeat the Denver Nuggets by 14 points. And last night we just saw the Denver Nuggets absolutely pretty much destroy the Portland Trailblazers. So it was pretty much it was very even so far. We saw both Dame and Jokic have 2 incredible games. It's just how much the role players around them can step up. We can see is really going to prove this series. It's whether the center rotation can do anything against Nikola Jokic in Portland due to Yusuf Nurkic and Enes Kanter not being that really good defensively when it comes to guarding Jokic. But at the same time, the guard rotation for Denver is pretty horrendous due to the fact that Jamal Murray and Will Barton are out, and they're relying on guys like Austin Rivers and Campazzo to guard Damian Lillard, top 15 NBA player, and CJ McCollum, one of the best shot creators in the NBA. So I know I had Denver in 7. You had Portland in 7. What have you seen from this series so far, and do you still agree with your pick?
Yes. I still think Portland in 6 or 7. And the reason I say that is because you know what you're going to get from Dame and Jokic. And we've seen that in both games so far. Both of them have had 2 terrific games. The key to this series is the Portland supporting cast because I think it's pretty set in stone that the team around Dame is better than the team around Jokic. Portland has a better roster with the injuries to Barton and Jamal Murray. Portland has the better team. So in Game 1, that team stepped up. Carmelo Anthony had 18 points in 22 minutes. CJ McCollum had a great game. Yusuf Nurkic actually played pretty well. He's someone who's had a pretty horrendous season so far. So it was good to see all of that. And then you come out yesterday, and all of those guys just completely shit the bed. Like, I don't think anyone on the Trailblazers yesterday I could characterize as having a good game besides Damian Lillard. Like McCollum shot the ball well. He shot I think 75% from the field. But why is McCollum only taking 12 shots in a playoff game?
That's what I was wondering as well.
He wasn't being aggressive whatsoever. And whenever it came down to like a meaningful possession, it was always Dame. It always was Dame with the ball in his hands. Melo shot the ball terribly. Nurkic was horrible like usual. Robert Covington didn't have a very good game. So when these guys don't play well, the Trailblazers aren't going to win because straight up, Jokic is a better player than Damian Lillard.
Yep.
And when it's going to come down to a one-on-one matchup,
most people are.
Yeah. When it comes down to a one-on-one matchup like last night, where it's pretty much Jokic versus Dame, the Nuggets are going to come out on top. Now, I think it's going to happen more often that the Trailblazers reserves do show up rather than don't. So I still think Portland's going to win this series, especially coming home for Game 3. But this is going to be a good one, and I think it could go either way.
Exactly. I mean, we saw, and you said the Trailblazers reserves and role players stepped up last night when the Nuggets ended up winning by 19 points. We saw Monte Morris play 30 minutes and shoot 50% from the field, had a plus-minus of plus 19. We even saw Paul Millsap come off the bench and in only 15 minutes had 15 points and 7 rebounds, which is not a Paul Millsap type stat line due to his old age. But we just saw good defense, especially from Campazzo. Imagine getting locked up by a 5'9" point guard, but that's really what Campazzo does. He's like John Stockton 2.0 in passing lanes. It seems like he's just always edging people and picking off passes. And I'm a huge Campazzo fan. I know that he is, of course, a backup point guard. He is not a starting point guard in the NBA. But I think he's a really, really solid backup point guard, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But It's really going to come down to like Michael Porter Jr. If he can keep up with CJ McCollum, Aaron Gordon, if he can keep up with like Yusuf Nurkic and Enes Kanter. And then those bench players are really going to play a huge role. Because, I mean, last night we saw the Nuggets were up by, I believe it was around 30 points in the second or third quarter. And then we just saw Damian Lillard hit, I think it was like 4 straight 3-point shots. He couldn't miss from that. But yet every time on the other way down the court, the Nuggets would just score at will again due to the fact that the Denver Nuggets don't really have that great defensive role players. I mean, Nurkic, Enes Kanter, not great defensively. Their forwards rotation in Melo, even like Norman Powell, not great defenders. So if they're gonna allow Austin Rivers to play 20 minutes and score 10 points, like as the starting shooting guard, because of the fact that everyone's injured, they're not going to end up winning these games because Jokic is too good at controlling the pacing, getting players open shots, and just building confidence in those players, just like we were talking about Luka Doncic.
Absolutely, yeah. Portland's defense is terrible. And the more I watch them, the more I realize that their defense is pretty atrocious. So if they lose, that's going to be the reason they lose. In the end, it doesn't matter who wins this series because they're going to lose to whoever wins the Phoenix Lakers series. Like, let's be real. But either one, I think whoever wins the series will be a boost for either Jokic or Dame's legacies. Because on one hand, you either have Dame beating the MVP in a first-round series and advancing to the second round, which would definitely help out his case as a good playoff performer, which has been cast in some doubt.
As maybe now a top 3 point guard in the NBA instead of top 4. Sorry, all Dame fans.
And then on the other hand, you got Jokic, who if he can lead the Nuggets to the second round without his second best player, to me that is incredibly impressive on his part. So really, I think the biggest takeaway from this series is which guy is going to get a boost for their legacy, Jokic or Dame? Because in the grand scheme of things, the series doesn't really matter.
Exactly. I know before the Jamal Murray injury, I had the Nuggets going all the way and making it to the finals and coming out west. To the fact that I just thought that Jokic's season and his pacing as a big man in the NBA when there's not that many physical big men was just absolutely incredible. And Jamal Murray was he was going back to bubble Murray before that injury. He was looking explosive, athletic, making those crazy contested shots that he was somehow draining in the bubble. But unfortunately with him and Will Barton's defensive impacts getting injured, it's really, you could see it's really, really affecting them. But look out for Denver for years to come now because Jokic isn't going away anytime soon because he'll be 38 and he will play the exact same way he plays right now. So, and I don't doubt that. Exactly. I mean, his shot looks, he's such a fun player to watch. If you haven't tuned into a Nuggets game in a little bit, make sure you tune in because Jokic is probably a top 3 player to watch in the NBA right now because he's just so much fun. And going from one big, really good MVP caliber center to another MVP caliber center, we got your favorite series. So, your favorite team coming out with a 7-point win against the Washington Wizards, starting with the games on Sunday, May 23rd. But it wasn't Embiid. It wasn't Ben Simmons. It was Tobias Harris finishing with 37 points, 6 rebounds, and his mid-range shot looked absolutely unguardable, probably because Rui Hachimura was sitting in front of him, but he still took advantage of it. Played 37 minutes, shot above 50%, and had 37 points. Now, that's not discrediting Joel Embiid's 30 points and plus minus of a plus 20. He played absolutely outstanding well, got to the free throw line 13 times and only missed 1. And then Ben Simmons, hate on him all you want for his 6 points and 6 missed free throws with a couple to end the game. He had 15 assists and 15 rebounds in that game. And he probably gave Seth Curry and Danny Green more open looks that they've ever gotten playing on that 76ers team. Now, I'll actually start with this series because I know you're going to love to go in depth about it. But my favorite thing about this Sixers team, and one of the reasons why I think that they can be a true contender out east, I know we were all hyped up on this Brooklyn Nets versus Milwaukee Bucks series. But on the other side, it looks like it's going to be Philly. And the main reason I think that is because of their mid-range game. We see so much three-point shooting in this league right now. But the 76ers really have mastered this mid-range game. If you look at it, they only shot 32 threes out of 93 shots attempted. And a lot of those three-point shots came from like Shake Milton, Furkan Korkmaz. Somehow Matisse Thybulle shot 2 threes and missed both of them, which should never be happening. He should be in there strictly for defense and never touching the ball on offense. But I loved watching this game just for the fact that it looked like Seth Curry was just able to dominate that mid-range game. And I love seeing teams continue to go to that kind of shot, especially when you have a guy like Ben Simmons who's willing to give up the ball. If he has an open layup, he's willing to give up a shot for the mid-range because that's just for some reason the way he plays the game.
No, we can't act like that is acceptable. Let's not that is not acceptable play on Ben's part.
That's true. No, but I love the Sixers spacing. I feel like they have so much good spacing on the team, especially with their starting lineup. With Ben Simmons, I mean, it looks like Seth Curry will get the ball in the open, and he'll just be wide open most of the time due to the fact that Ben Simmons draws double teams, Joel Embiid draws double teams, and I just love their mid-range efficiency. I don't know, when I was watching this game, that was just my favorite part about it because you don't see a lot of teams shooting the mid-range as much, but they really did.
The thing that the only spacing I think that we have, I mean, statistically, the Sixers were bottom 5 in floor spacing this year.
Yeah,
which was probably what I would say our biggest weakness, and that stems from Ben Simmons, just because when you have a point guard who is zero threat from beyond 5 feet, you can just stack the paint, which creates zero floor spacing and backing off and guarding other shooters. But what really does create that floor spacing, as you said, Embiid's drawing doubles which is so key, and he's become such a good passer out of a double, which is one thing he has improved on so much over the last 2 years, is that he finds those open guys now. He finds Curry in the corner or Danny Green at the wing, whoever it is, he'll find those guys, which I love about him. Should I go in depth more right now on why the Wizards are going to lose or on the Sixers?
Let's go on the Sixers because I think everyone in their right minds know that the Wizards are going to lose this series. But
I do want to take a second to talk shit about Russell Westbrook. We'll get there.
And Davis Bertans.
Stay tuned, Will Hoffman. I'm going to get to your boy. The Sixers.
Well, do you agree with this? Like Will Hoffman said, he's being very reasonable here.
Sure. The Sixers are going to win this series in 4 or 5 games. I have no doubt about that. Defense was incredible, exactly what I expected. Embiid played great. Harris played great. Simmons did not, but I've come to expect that Simmons is going to suck in the playoffs. So at this point, I'll be surprised if he plays well. It'll be a pleasant surprise for me instead of me being disappointed when he plays bad. That said, Ben didn't play bad. He just didn't play good, which seems to be how I feel like Ben plays every single game now. He doesn't play bad or good. He's just kind of there. Anyways, as long as we shoot the way we did in the second half, there's no way that we lose before the Eastern Conference Finals. Seth was hitting his shots. Green was hitting his shots. Obviously, Toby was hitting his shots. Embiid was playing great. The way that the Sixers' path is, there's no one beating them before the Eastern Conference Finals. No matter what the Hawks or the Knicks do, there's no beating the Sixers in a 7-game series for either one of them. It's just really, can we compete with Brooklyn and Milwaukee? I think we can, but I don't think in the end we're going to end up beating them. It's a conversation for another day. We got to see how it gets as it gets closer. But as the team is currently constructed, I'm getting less and less optimistic that the Sixers are in the same tier as the Nets and the Bucks. And I think that mostly stems from having more easily guardable stars. I think it's as a defensive assignment, locking down Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris is a hell of a lot easier than locking down Durant, Kyrie, and Harden, or Giannis, Middleton, and Holiday. It is tremendously easier as a defensive opponent. So really, the Sixers, what they're going to need to do to win it all is they're going to need to win it through their defense, which is really that's what they've
really difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we've seen Joel Embiid really expand his mid-range shot. That's one of the reasons why I love their mid-range game, is because it seems like Joel Embiid will shoot any mid-range shot and it's going in.
His step back is beautiful. He has developed such a good step back. He has the finesse of James Harden in the body of Hakeem Olajuwon, and it just makes me so happy to watch him offensively.
Exactly. And I know you're talking about the defensive side of things, but if we're going to look at the other team's defense, the Wizards, they've been known for being one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA this year. And so if you're trying to guard MVP Joel Embiid, if he was healthy, with Alex Len, Robin Lopez, and superstar player center for the Washington Wizards, Daniel Gafford, it's not going to end up working out in your favor, even though Robin Lopez has the hook shot of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar offensively. His defensive impact is not what it ever – he was never the best defender, even in his prime. So I wouldn't even go that far. But the Wizards have been known for not really playing that good defense all season, and they showed it this game because the 76ers, outside of Tobias Harris and Embiid, did not play great offensively. I mean, obviously we saw Ben Simmons, missing those 6 free throws that really took into account at the end of the game and making all 76ers fans just a little bit stressed out when they didn't need to be. But
I
now,
could go to the game with a blindfold on, and I wouldn't miss 6 free throws in a row.
Exactly. But
what the hell?
Let's move on now.
Free time. Like, what do Ben Simmons and Antetokounmpo do in their free time that they can't make a free throw?
We go to the park. When I'm at home, we go to the park 2-3 times a week, and we hit free throws.
Yeah,
so
it's not that hard.
Something you practice.
So frustrating. Can I rant about Westbrook now?
I was going to say, let's move on to hearing about Russell Westbrook's 43 minutes, shooting under 50% at 16 points, 14 assists, 5 rebounds, 6 turnovers, 4 personal fouls, and a plus-minus of -9. Go for it. Take the wheel.
Your top 5 point guard in the NBA had the worst offensive rating on his team, the second worst defensive rating on his team, only behind the guy who was guarding Joel Embiid. 6 turnovers. Shot 41% from the field. He had the worst true shooting on his team by 15%, which is atrocious. And he only made 3 shots in the entire second half, while Bradley Beal was carrying the entire squad. Does that sound like a top 5 point guard to you? When Damian Lillard's out dropping 40, when Steph Curry is playing MVP, when Trae Young is hitting game winners, when Luka Doncic is carrying a bad team against a great team, when Chris Paul exists. Like, really?
Exactly.
When Kyrie Irving is dropping 50, 40, 90s, 30-point per games, sorry, Westbrook. It's the playoffs every time. He gets to the playoffs and just completely loses it.
Does that sound like a top 5 point guard to you, Will? Yes.
Mm-hmm. Hey, there's a reason Westbrook has never gotten out of the first round without Kevin Durant or James Harden on his team. And that's going to continue, and that's probably how he's going to end his career. Because Westbrook just isn't efficient enough as a player to win a playoff game. That's just how it goes. Even with Paul George, he couldn't get out of the first round. He couldn't beat Joe Ingles and rookie Donovan Mitchell with a top 3 MVP candidate on his team.
Joe Ingles.
I'm sorry. The Westbrook stands have been getting to me a little bit lately. And I just need to remind them all of where Westbrook actually lies in the playoff, in the player rankings. And the playoffs are a great time to showcase that because that's when true playoff Westbrook comes out.
I have nothing more to say about that. I mean, you pretty much got it covered. I've been letting you do most of the Westbrook slander. No disrespect to Russ Westbrook. He's an incredible player. Go down as a top
He's
10
top
point guard of all time.
He's top
When it's
7
all
right now in the league.
Yeah, top 7 point guard in the league right now. I think I actually had him at 7 on my all-time rankings of point guards. I think it was a little high. I'll probably have him around 8 or 9 the more I look into it. Maybe
12.
he'll be like 15 to 18 range after this series. But no disrespect to Russell Westbrook. He's such an incredible player. If you want to make the playoffs, get Russell Westbrook on your team. If you want to win the championship, don't have Russell Westbrook on your team. We'll end it at that. Let's move on now to I'll look into the other games. We'll save the fun one for the end. We'll save the Lakers Suns talking about that series for the end. We'll move on to, in my opinion, the best game out of this season, out of the first couple games we've seen. I know you could say it about the Milwaukee-Miami game, but when you see two teams that aren't supposed to really be in the playoffs going at it, I wouldn't say not supposed to be, but two young teams who in the beginning of the season, no one expected to be super competitive, end up being the 4 and 5 seed, and then having an incredible first game in the Atlanta Hawks versus the New York Knicks. The Atlanta Hawks, of course, came out and won the game by 2 points due to a Trae Young floater with 1 second left in the game. We saw Alec Burks drop 27 points and make me regret the Warriors ever trading him because we have him next to Stephen Curry as our number 2 scorer.
We had him last year too. Both of our teams lost him in the last year.
Exactly. I mean, we saw MVP Julius Randle come out and have not the best of games, and the Knicks were still able to only lose by 2 points. But we saw the role players at Atlanta it was a really, really weird game in the end. Final score was 107-105. Atlanta ended up winning the game, and Trae Young was getting trash talked by a lot of those fans at Madison Square Garden. And that game right there, if you watch that game, is the reason why so many players love playing at Madison Square Garden with limited fans, that it looked like an actual NBA playoff game. And you could see all the Knicks fans who haven't had a playoff game in such a long time really out there supporting their team. And even though they took the loss and Trae Young really shut them up at the end of the game, it was such an exciting and fun game to watch. So now I'm going to talk to you. I had Atlanta winning in 7. You have New York winning in 7 if you look at our Backcourt Press Instagram page. I don't know if any games are going to be a blowout of over 10 points in the series because I feel like these teams are so evenly matched. So talk to me about this series.
Absolutely. I said on my recent update on this series that this would definitely be going to 7 games. And while that's going to be hard to predict, I will say there will not be a game in this series that is like a blowout. Every game is going to be a close game. Now, whether the Hawks win 4 2-point games and sweep the Knicks, it's very likely. Or the Knicks go out and win 4 games, the next 4 games, all within a 5-point. Yeah, that could happen. I just think these are such evenly matched teams that you're in for great game after great game. But the one thing I do want to mention is a little hypocrisy among NBA fans, because you see this a lot. There's a lot of social media slander on Disney, Anthony Davis, the other day for 13 points and poor shooting in the loss. Can we talk about Julius Randle for a second? Right, Anthony Davis gets slandered for 5 for 6.
Julius Randle had a good game. What are you talking about? Everyone loves Julius Randle.
Anthony Davis has 13 points on 5 for 16. And social media explodes. Disney is the number one thing trending on Twitter for like an hour. Julius Randle shoots 6 for 23 and has 15 points. And it's just crickets. This is a guy who people are saying is the lock for most improved player. Should be all NBA 3rd or 2nd team. People are saying some have him top 5, 10 MVP. That's a little far for me. Maybe top 10 I could see, but Julius Randle, man, you gotta step it up. If no one's gonna criticize you, I will, because he needs to be held accountable. He needs to be held to the standard of a superstar. If people are going to treat him as one, if people are going to treat him as an All NBA player, he needs to play like one. 6 for 23 from the field and 15 points is not going to cut it. His offensive rating was 73, which is atrocious. I will say he was good on the defensive end, so I will credit him with that. He had a great defensive game, as he always does. The Knicks in general had a pretty solid defensive game. The Hawks were just hitting their shots. Can't fault them for that. But Julius Randle's going to have to step up if the Knicks are going to win. I'm changing my prediction from Knicks in 7 to Hawks in 7.
Oh.
I was saying to my dad when we were watching the game with about 2 minutes left, I said, whoever won game 1, I said was going to win the series. And so I'm going to stick with that. The Hawks ended up pulling through in game 1. So I'm changing my prediction to a Hawks in 7. But it could still go one of two ways. I honestly, these are such evenly matched teams. I think the Hawks are overall more talented. I trust Trae Young as a superstar more than I trust Julius Randle. But the Knicks have the intensity. You saw Madison Square Garden. You saw their fans.
Oh, it's amazing.
They want this. The fan base wants it. The players want it. They're better coached. I think Tibbs is a great coach. Even though the Hawks are the better team, I think this is such an evenly matched series that you could flip a coin on it.
Exactly. I know you were talking about the slander of Julius Randle, but I'm also going to, you talked about that. I'm going to give a lot of credit to DeAndre Hunter. Came out and only had 5 points in the game and only, no assists, no steals, no blocks, 4 rebounds. Had what looks like on the stat sheet, a pretty bad game. But he had the direction of guarding Julius Randle for what seemed like a good portion of this game. And I have to give a lot of credit to him on the defensive side. DeAndre Hunter is such an underrated player. I know he was injured for a lot of the season, but if he wasn't, I think a lot of people would be talking about him in like top 3 and D players in the NBA due to the fact that his defense is something that if the Hawks are going to win, I think they're really, really going to need it. Yeah. I loved his presence on the court. I know John Collins looked a little frustrated out there sometimes. He only finished with 12 points and 7 rebounds. His fit is starting to be a little questionable with me, for me when it comes to this Atlanta Hawks team. But overall, I think exactly. Overall, I think the Hawks are a better, more talented team. I think the Knicks might want it a little more if we're talking outside of Trae Young, because I think Trae Young wants it more than anyone. As you could see, he really wants to prove himself as a top player in the league. And even if he's going to jump into the player behind him and shoot 15 free throws a game, if the refs are not changing that call, I don't see why he doesn't do it. I don't blame it. I don't think it's on him. I know a lot of people are like, that's not basketball. Steve Nash came out and criticized it. A lot of the media came out and criticized it. But if the league isn't going to make a rule to change it, and Trae Young's going to be a top free throw shooter in the NBA, if they have a chance to go down every time on the court and get 2 free throws out of Trae Young, they're going to win the game. Like that, to me, that's just a well-known fact. So I don't blame him for doing it. I blame more the referees in the league for not changing the rule.
He's exploiting a bad rule in the NBA. There's nothing wrong with that on his part. 2 things I want to mention about the Hawks, because we just talked about the Knicks for a little bit. Lou Williams was awesome. I loved. Yep. I mean, Williams had the best game I've seen him play in probably maybe a year. He came off the bench, and I remember laughing because me and my dad were talking about how he doesn't pass, and he came in, and I think I saw at one point in 11 minutes he had taken 8 shots, which is
13 minutes. He took 9 shots.
Yep, classic Lou Will right there. But he provided the spark off the bench that Atlanta needed to keep their lead at one point in the third quarter and early fourth quarter. And another thing I wanted to mention, a stat that I saw that was pretty mind-boggling. Trae Young had a 30 and 10 game in his first ever playoff game. Only 3 other players in NBA history have done that. LeBron James, Chris Paul, and Derrick.
D Rose.
Those are the only other 3 players who have had their first ever career playoff game being a 30 and 10 game. Trae Young is in very good company. He's got the ice in his veins. I feel like Trae.
No, don't take that away from D'Angelo Russell. D'Lo will be doing that one day in the playoffs.
D'Lo might not see the playoffs again the rest of his career.
If he's in Minnesota, I'm not disagreeing.
I just feel like Trae Young is one of the most hated NBA players, right? We're just talking about Russell Westbrook. You don't see many NBA fans putting Trae Young ahead of Russell Westbrook. I feel like a majority of the NBA fan base has Russell Westbrook firmly ahead of Trae Young, and if you say anything differently, they'll yell at you. I think I have Trae Young ahead of Russell Westbrook, and I think yesterday's games proved why Trae Young is the superior player. I mean, the way that he can score the ball from anywhere on the floor, his playmaking was ridiculous, drawing doubles and dishing it to open guys. He He had the ice in his veins right there at the end. He hit the clutch shot to win it all. I mean, Trae Young is an absolute bucket right now, and the Hawks surround him with enough defensive pieces to keep them alive. Obviously, he's not a very good defender, but he's good enough on offense that, and when it comes to guards, offense is more valuable than defense. It's always been that big men defense is more valuable and guards offense is more valuable, and that's how it will continue to be. His offense provides such a lift for the Hawks that he, to me, is borderline top 5 point guard. I have him 6 right now, but he's right there, and the series is going to prove that because he's going to continue to do this the whole series.
Exactly. I mean, we saw it. He's known for his long-range shot. He only attempted 3 3-point shots and only made one of them, and was still able to put up 32 points, just showing how incredible his offensive skill set really is. He can't, and the thing is, he could come out next game against the Knicks and have 6 for 8 from 3-point range, and he's just going to be as dominant as he was in the first game. So I love him as a player. I loved him when he was out of college in Oklahoma. He just reminded me of the next Steph Curry, and I love the way Steph Curry plays basketball. So, I mean, I have a lot of trust in Trae Young. I think his defense, as he gets older, will get better. His just IQ of basketball will get better, and that says something because his playmaking ability at such a young age is already so incredible that I think we're just going to see him get better and better. And along with this young Hawks team, we haven't even seen like Onyeka Okongwu, Cam Reddish. Those guys are barely even getting rotational minutes anymore. Well, yeah, I guess so. But Onyeka Okongwu, you got DeAndre Hunter.
Yeah,
I love Clint Capella in the series. I think he's the true X factor. His paint dominance is something that's really he's such an underrated center. I mean, you talk about top centers in the NBA. Clint Capella's never get brought up. Yeah, I feel like Clint Capella has the most 15 and 15 games out of every. He probably doesn't, but it seems like that's just who he is as a center. So I think he's the true X factor in this series. I know we talked about all those other players, but I'll stick with my prediction that I made in the beginning of the series. That's Hawks in 7. But it's no matter who wins this series. I know we got a comment saying my buddy Ziad says Knicks in 6, who is a Knicks fan. So I understand where he's coming from, and that could very well happen if Julius Randle and RJ Barrett play very efficient. I'm not going to discredit that opinion. At the same time, I just think the Hawks are too overpowered offensively, and I'm going to stick with Hawks in 7.
If you look at it from this perspective, right? Julius Randle had one of his worst games of the season, and the Knicks lost off of a buzzer beater. I mean, if you look at it from that, I mean, the Knicks are in good shape. So this could go anyway. Before we move on, I just want to talk about how horrible Danilo Gallinari's haircut is.
Oh my God, it's awful. I was waiting for someone to bring it up.
Sorry, Danilo, please get that cut. That is horrible. That is horrendous. I don't want to see that on my screen anymore. The fact that Trae Young no longer has the worst hair on his own team just shows you that Gallo, do something about that, please.
Yeah, geez. I was watching that game too. I was like, what the hell is that, man? Moving on to the We Believe Grizzlies defeating the number 1 seed Utah Jazz in the first game of this series that we both have predicted to now go to 5 games. And having Utah go 4-0 in the next 5. I apologize to Memphis fans. I apologize to Zach's roommate, but this was an amazing game to watch, though. No discredit to Memphis. They played their hearts out. They will continue to play their hearts out. We saw Dylan Brooks, one of the biggest trash talkers in the NBA, shoot 50% from the field and have 31 points, have an amazing game. We saw Jonas Valanciunas with his double-double. But in the end, it was truly the Ja Morant show, clutching this game up and showing why Ja Morant is one of the best young players in the NBA and probably one of the best already leaders on any team in the NBA. But I also think it shows the depth of this Memphis team. I mean, they had Xavier Tillman come in, and although he didn't even have a good game, he looked like his impact out there was very decent. Grayson Allen seems like he comes in for 2 minutes, his 4 threes, and then goes right back to the bench. I know he played 23 minutes this game, but against the Warriors, his first minutes were in overtime, and he hit 2 threes to come out the gates in overtime. And when that happened, I knew the Warriors were losing. Big shout out to this Memphis team. They're really, really deep. They're not even playing Brandon Clark via coach's decision, which I think says something about how depth this team is. But yet the Utah Jazz had a very bad game. As we said, they shot 25% from 3. Jordan Clarkson, the 6th man of the year, came out and shot 0 for 8 from 3. The team just did not look good, especially in their bench rotation. And they lost by 3 points. without Donovan Mitchell playing and having Joe Ingles replace Donovan Mitchell, which athletically I know they're very similar. But besides that, Joe Ingles is not the player Donovan Mitchell is. I want to know. We both have Utah coming out in 5. Unfortunately for Grizzlies fans, talk about the series.
The key to that game was Rudy Gobert's foul trouble.
Yes.
And I know everyone's going to be like, oh, here's Zach again, hyping up Rudy Gobert. Yeah, I'm probably the only person in the entire country other than Jazz fans and French people who actually like Rudy Gobert. But I think he's great. I think he's a great player, and I think he deserves so much more love than he gets. The Jazz were in
Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, easily, and that's coming from a Sixers fan. The Jazz were in control in the first quarter. The only time they had control in that game was in the first quarter when Gobert was in the game. And then Gobert had three fouls and was forced to come out. And from there, it flipped. Memphis took over, went on a run, took control of the game. And then Rudy came back in, more fouls, more foul trouble, ended up fouling out, only played 25 minutes, was out for the last 5 minutes of the game. They are significantly better when he is on the court. Both offensively and defensively, with the space he creates on offense with his pick and roll, the impact that he has, it is the key to their whole 3-point shooting because it creates so much space with him and then the 4 guys on the perimeter, and then the way he has his defensive impact, right? No one will even come to the rim when he is down there. Just his mere presence prevents guards from driving on him. And as soon as he was out of the game, you saw Ja and Dillon Brooks just attacking the rim every single time. If Gobert can stay out of foul trouble and play a full 35 minutes, and I think even if Donovan Mitchell didn't even come back, I still think the Jazz would still win this series. They shot the ball terrible. They won't shoot that bad again. Maybe once, but I mean, this is a top 3-point shooting team in the league. It's not going to happen again. Gobert will be back and fully good. And then once Mitchell comes back, that's the nail in the coffin. The Grizzlies won by 3, and all of these factors were hurting the Jazz. Once they're all good again, the Jazz will take this one pretty handily. This is a series I'm still not very excited about. I think this is going to be a lot of blowouts in the next couple games.
Yeah, and you really covered this game pretty much exactly as and I think most fans will. There's not much more to talk about except for my new favorite player in the NBA that's not named D'Angelo Russell, who plays power forward or small forward for the Memphis Grizzlies. Slow-mo Kyle Anderson is such a funny player to watch. Mans does everything in slow motion, whether it's his dribbling, whether it's his shot, whether it's the way that he just dribbles. I know Zach and I were talking the other day. He's on a fast break running up the court, and by the time he gets to the basket, there's already 4 guys in front of him due to how slow of a player he is. I don't know. I just want to put some respect on his name. He's such a fun player to watch. And this game, I felt like I was like laughing at him by the way he plays. Well, like, hey, I mean, if they win the game and he plays well, then they win the game. So good for them. But I had to put that out there.
That's all I got about the Grizzlies Jazz game. I feel like there's not much to say. This is definitely the least exciting of the series, in my opinion.
Yeah, I know if Stephen Curry was playing in the series, probably be a little bit more to talk about. Even if they got swept, I think there'd be more to talk about. But unfortunately, the Grizzlies, they played a little bit better in overtime, and Draymond Green couldn't hit a floater.
The Jazz and the Grizzlies have the 29th and 30th biggest fan bases in the NBA. So that tells you how excited everyone is about this series.
Exactly. Now, we're an hour 15 minutes in. We're about to wrap it up with the podcast and everything, but we have one more series to cover before we finish, and that is probably the most exciting series of them all. The Los Angeles Lakers taking on the 7 seed Los Angeles Lakers, taking on the 2 seed Phoenix Suns, which is just such an amazing series. The first game, though, is really when LeBron and AD combined for 31 points, and Devin Booker on his own was able to play 45 of the 48 minutes and just completely take over this game, even with Chris Paul exiting the game for a little bit. It was such a fun game to watch. But the X factor of this game, I know we both talked about it, Devin Booker was hitting his shots. Mikal Bridges was playing lockdown defense. But for the first time in what seems like his entire career, we saw DeAndre Ayton care and show energy on the defensive side of the ball. He finished with 21 points, 16 rebounds, 8 defensive rebounds, and 8 offensive rebounds, and absolutely just outplaying Anthony Davis incredibly. Anthony Davis finished with the worst plus-minus on the Lakers with a minus 18 in 39 minutes, 13 points, 5 for 16, 7 rebounds, all defensive rebounds, no offensive. And it was really DeAndre Ayton's assignment on Anthony Davis. And you could just see when DeAndre Ayton would get a defensive stop or even a timeout was called, you could see him excited and wanting to win, which is something we don't really see out of the 6'11" number 1 overall pick out of Arizona. I know you still have the Lakers winning the series. I do as well. I've had the series going 7 from the start. You have it going 6.
I switched. I originally had Lakers in 6 after game 1. I'm switching it to Lakers in 7, but still Lakers. It's Lakers winning it.
Talk to me.
I could talk about this series for like 30 minutes, so you might have to cut me off at some point. But
I got time.
Yeah. There's so many things I could say about the Lakers and Anthony Davis specifically. First of all, Andre Drummond, terrible fit.
Why were you talking about him?
The worst experiment I think I've ever seen. Like, get him off the court, get him off the team. He does not help. He actually had his best game with the Lakers.
12-9, good efficiency.
12-9. Yeah, but the difference is Anthony Davis is, to me, plays best as a center.
Always has.
In the Warriors game the other day, Anthony Davis had 0 points when Andre Drummond was on the floor with him. Shot 0 of 8 from the field. When he was playing center, he had 25 points. Like, it isn't hard to figure out, and I don't know why the Lakers haven't yet. Anthony Davis is not good when he's playing on the perimeter because when Anthony Davis is playing a power forward, it clogs up the paint because then you have LeBron who's a primary attacker, Anthony Davis, and Andre Drummond on the inside, which pushes Anthony Davis to the perimeter. Anthony Davis shoots 26% from 3. He's not a good 3-point shooter. He was able to shoot it pretty well in the bubble last year, but this year he has not been a good 3-point shooter, yet he still is attempting too many of them a game. He's missing most of them. This isn't a Kevin Love kind of thing where he can adjust his game and just become an outside shooter, a spot-up guy for the rest of his career. Anthony Davis is too good and too dominant to be able to do that. So it's frustrating to me to see that's becoming his role right now. He needs to get in the paint and continue to be the offensive and defensive monster that he is. Do you have anything to say about AD?
I completely agree. I think he is a primary center. I know that going back to where you were saying the Lakers haven't figured it out. I know there's been reports that Anthony Davis has specifically said, I don't want to play center. I know he's came out and said that he wants to be a power forward. To me, I'd just say why. It seems like this whole team would be so much better built around if they ran Anthony Davis at the center position, even slid LeBron possibly to the 4. Taylor Horton-Tucker and Kuzma can get those forward minutes. I
will tell you what the Lakers' best lineup is right now. It's Dennis Schroeder, Alex Caruso, KCP, LeBron, and Anthony Davis.
I completely agree.
When those 5 are on the floor, that is when the Lakers are at their absolute peak. Because then you have LeBron playing basically a point forward with Schroeder's attacking, KCP and Caruso shooting, as long as
Caruso's defense.
Incredible perimeter defense.
Incredible.
Anthony Davis at the 5, which is where he belongs the most. That is the best lineup on the floor for the Lakers. And the fact that they don't run that lineup as much as they should is a little disappointing to see. Caruso, we both mentioned. I think Caruso's been fantastic so far. I remember a sequence where he had 3 defensive stops right in a row, caused 3 turnovers consecutively, which gave the Lakers 6 points, which was a huge swing. It was like a 12-point game went to like a 6-point game. So that was huge. KCP did not shoot the ball very well, but as we saw in the playoffs last year, he's streaky. He's going to have games where he shoots 1 for 7, and then he'll have a game where he'll shoot 5 for 9 from 3. It's going to happen. He's a spot-up corner shooter. He'll get those shots, and he'll make those shots eventually.
Exactly.
There was a point in the finals last year at halftime of game 1 when Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was the finals MVP. So give it time. Along with the Lakers, LeBron James didn't look as explosive or as athletic or
Because
aggressive.
it's because he's not 100%, Zach. Did you not hear the memo? He's not 100% now in his career. It's finally happened. Jesus.
He did end up finishing with 18, 10, and 7, which is a subpar playoff game for the King. Lemicky, he's really gonna need to step it up if they're gonna win this series. I mean, look, everyone's talk. I was telling you this last night. I have mixed feelings on this series because history shows that LeBron is fine. Like, he's 15 and 14 in game ones in his career, and in those series, he's gone on to win, I think, like 90% of them. Like, he loses game ones all the time, and it doesn't matter. In the end, he still comes back and wins the series. But I'm a little worried because he didn't look like himself out there. And Phoenix is one of the best teams he's ever faced in the first round. This isn't no 2018 Indiana Pacers with Victor Oladipo as the only good player on the team. Like, this is a completely different breed. This Suns team is dangerous. And LeBron and Anthony Davis are going to have to be playing their absolute best to win the series, which they can. They absolutely can. But it's going to take a lot. He can't casually play through this like it's any other random Eastern Conference bum series. Like, this is the West. And this is the competitive West. This isn't the bubble.
Yeah.
But like, this is real basketball, and I still think the Lakers are going to come through. I still think they're going to win the series, especially with the Chris Paul going down. I don't think we're going to see a peak Chris Paul the rest of this series. I don't know about you, but watching Chris Paul in that game, he looked awful. He did not look like the same player. His ball handling, he was just randomly losing the ball at times. His jump shot was completely different. His form was just not what it always is. He was like cocking it back to like over his shoulder, which just doesn't look right from his shooting form.
Carlos Boozer.
Yeah, right. Like, it just didn't look good. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter for the Suns. Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. I mean, Devin Booker's
amazing game.
Devin Booker is one of my 5 favorite players in the league today. I'm a huge fan of his, and I will continue to be. For great first ever playoff performance. I know he is going to. It makes me feel good about that. I got this prediction so far right, and I'm going to stick with it. I said it after the Suns missed the playoffs last year. I don't know if you remember this, but I said Devin Booker will not miss the playoffs again for the next 8 years. I'm
8 years.
I think Devin Booker is a consistent playoff guy now, and he is going to continue to establish himself as that. He's ridiculous, dude. He does everything. He just offensively, it is incredible the way he is able to play the game. His playmaking is incredibly underrated. He was finding all sorts of open shooters. Mikal Bridges in the corner, one of the most automatic shots that I've seen this year when he's open in the corner. In general, Bridges is just a fantastic 3-and-D role player, great starter for them. Booker is, like I said, his playmaking was great. He was making all of his mid-range shots. He was hitting his open threes, clutch shots, everything, ball handling. He was doing it all for them. I'm very excited to see where this series goes.
Now, you mentioned when we were talking out East that you think that the winner of the Bucks Nets will go to the finals. Could this possibly be the series that the winner of this series goes to the Western Conference or goes to the finals out west?
Absolutely, but I will say the one thing is the Phoenix Suns' kryptonite this season has been the Los Angeles Clippers. I think the Clippers are undefeated against the Suns this year. Kawhi and PG match up really well against this Phoenix team. I don't think Phoenix would beat the Clippers in a series if the Clippers managed to get to the conference finals. But
no, they're not getting out of the first round.
Maybe. If the Suns do beat the Lakers and they avoid the Clippers, I think they are the best team out west.
You look at this Suns team, and you're probably not going to see Jay Crowder shoot 0 for 7 from 3 again. Because we saw Jay Crowder step it up for the Miami Heat incredibly last year. And I just don't see Jay Crowder shooting 0 for 7 from 3 again and not missing or not making a single 3-point shot because he shot 0 for 7 in 29 minutes and still had a plus-minus of plus 14 when he was on the court. And Devin Booker played 45 minutes, had a plus-minus of plus 9. So it just shows how impactful Jay Crowder was on the court for the team. But that pick and roll between Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton when Chris Paul ended up going down and the ball was in Devin Booker's hands. And shout out to Cameron Payne as well. He actually really stepped up. I know he didn't shoot the ball well this game, but he did play very, very valuable point guard minutes for this team. And just his career has been crazy. The fact that he's actually a backup point guard on a championship contending team, I would say the Phoenix Suns are, compared to where he was like back in Chicago, is just kind of incredible if you really look at it. But no, Devin Booker, they were doing like this dribble handoff between DeAndre and Devin Booker. Devin Booker wasn't missing that short mid-range shot. It didn't matter if Manute Bol or Anthony Davis was guarding him. I mean, that shot was going in every single time he shot it. It was a thing of beauty to watch. DeAndre Ayton looked unstoppable on the offensive side. He shot 10 for 11 from the field. I'd honestly like to see him even get more than 11 shots up in a game. I think that's not enough. I know he had 21 points, but even if Anthony Davis is guarding him, they have to heavily rely on DeAndre Ayton. He's such a crucial part of this team. He's truly the only real center that they're playing because of the fact that Dario Saric has been running the backup center minutes. Now, no disrespect to Dario Saric. He actually has been pretty solid for this team.
Full disrespect to
you hate him.
He's not good. Sorry.
They got, Cam Johnson, kind of a small forward, power forward who's been running power forward minutes as well. But no, I think this X factor, we know what Mikal Bridges is going to bring on the defensive side of the ball, especially if he's on LeBron James. I think he's one of the few players out west that could possibly actually slow LeBron down. I'm not saying slow LeBron down and he's going to average what he did this game every single game. But if he even averages a 30-point triple-double and the Lakers lose, I'm going to give a lot of that credit to Mikal Bridges. But I think the true X factor for this series is going to be DeAndre Ayton. I think the true X factor for the Suns' playoff run is going to be DeAndre Ayton due to the fact that he's been such a mediocre defender his whole career. I would even possibly put him below average defender when it comes to the center position. But now he's really, you could see his energy up. You could see that he wants to win this series. And the fact that I think a good thing for the Suns is that when they were betting, they came in as an underdog into the series technically. Once the Warriors lost that game to the Lakers, the Suns were technically the underdogs to win this series as the 2 seed. Yep. And Monty Williams is way too good of a head coach to allow this Phoenix Suns team to go out to the Lakers without a fight. Yep. I know we still have the Lakers winning the series, but honestly, if the Suns win this series, I don't know if they're going to lose another series at all in the playoffs.
Like I said, I think the matchup against the Clippers would be one that I think would be in a disadvantage for the Suns. But overall, they're one of the most dangerous teams out there. They'll be very tough to beat overall.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you said the X factor is 8, and I would agree with you on that. Yeah, the other X factor to me is Chris Paul's health. You got to keep that is something that I'm going to be monitoring. Got to keep your eye on that because if Chris Paul is not fully healthy or is playing at half his capacity, Suns aren't going to go very far.
Exactly. Devin Booker's not going to be able to play 45 minutes every single game and put up 34, 8, and 7, especially the 8 assists. You could see that he was really controlling that pick and roll game that normally Chris Paul does with DeAndre Ayton. Yep. And then Devin Booker comes off ball, catches it, does his one dribble pull-ups, has every single shot in the book. Devin Booker does so.
Devin Booker has proved over the last 5 years that he can do literally anything on the basketball court. But he works best when he has Chris Paul doing all that stuff for him so he can focus on scoring. Now, of course, Chris Paul goes down. Booker can go back and pick up that load and do everything again. I don't think it'll help the Suns in the long run. I think Booker operates best when he's just focusing on scoring. But we've seen he can still carry this team. We've seen it in the past.
It's like Kyrie Irving and the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, you see Kyrie Irving can do everything offensively, but the team is so much better when James Harden's handling the ball due to the fact that he's a better playmaker. I think it's the exact same thing. This is the exact same thing out west.
Scoring, absolutely.
50, 40, 90 club.
Yep.
Third best point guard in the NBA. I'm sorry, Trailblazers fans. I don't ever compare Damian Lillard to Steph Curry again, and this is what's going to happen on the Backcourt Press podcast.
If Dame brings Portland to the second round, I might have to join in with the Dame fans and put him ahead of Kyrie.
Oh my God, that will be the end of this podcast. No,
maybe I'll put him ahead of Luka too.
Oh my God, now you're going crazy.
Before we end,
yeah, go for it.
I saw just a thing about Dame and Luka. Someone said if you swapped Dame and Luka, the Trailblazers are going to the Western Conference Finals. Do you agree with that?
Yep.
And the Mavericks don't make the playoffs?
No, Mavericks make the playoffs.
You think they sneak in?
The Lakers are what? They're the 7th seed. Nah, yeah, they're the 7. They're the 8 seed.
I think the Warriors with Curry versus Mavericks,
Above.
same. I would take the Warriors with Curry.
Me too. I would too. And do you imagine the open shots CJ McCollum would get if he played with Luka Doncic. I mean,
Dude,
they'd actually have an okay caliber center in Nurkic because Porzingis can't do anything in the paint. I mean, okay.
Robert Covington would be elevated to be an actual like solid player.
Yeah, maybe this is just me. Why are there so many big men? I don't know. This is why I was watching a couple of the games. I've been hearing a lot of people talk about this. Why, when you watch a big man in the game, especially someone like Kristaps Porzingis, and say a guard, I don't care how tall you are as a guard, except unless you're Ben Simmons, and a guard gets switched on to Kristaps Porzingis, he brings them to the perimeter. Back them. You could be 7'3", 100 pounds, no muscle on you, pure skeleton. Back the guard down. I don't understand what Kristaps is like scared of the post. He's straight up just scared of it. And I'm like, it's oh my God.
Porzingis was gifted by God to be 7'3", and he's just throwing that in the trash. You know what I'd do if I was 7'3"?
I'd be Michael Jordan.
Dude.
Oh my God. I had to bring that up, man. It makes me so frustrated to watch that. He has so much potential to be such a good post player, such a just good all-around player in the NBA, and yet he gets like one block a game. Like, dude, just don't be a liability at least.
Do you remember when he averaged 2.5 blocks per game with the Knicks?
He looked like he cared. He just looked like he cared a little bit.
I know. It's the Knicks culture.
Now he just stands on the perimeter and shoots 1 for 6 from 3, has 14 points a game, and is the reason that the Mavericks aren't going to win the championship. Like, that's how I'm going to end this podcast. Any last things you would like to say about the Sacramento Kings before we head off?
Stay tuned for the top 10 players in Kings history. I had to dig pretty deep for this one.
Hey, don't forget, today we talked about number 1 overall pick, DeAndre Ayton. Number 3 overall pick, Luka Doncic. Number 4 overall pick, Jaren Jackson Jr. Number 5 overall pick, Trae Young. Do you remember who went second?
I don't know. Who was 2? Was it the Kings?
Oh.
Did they take some stiff named Marvin Bagley? I don't know.
Yeah, dude. Oh my God. Well, Marvin Bagley slander is tolerated here at Backcourt Press because actually all Kings players except for Halliburton and De'Aaron Fox. Then you can tolerate any other hate for any other players.
And Buddy, I like Buddy.
Yeah.
Bring him to Philly. Bring him to Philly.
Oh well, if he's on any other team, he's not getting any.
This is a home for him.
Bring him to Golden State. We need someone to shoot the ball that's not Steph Curry, man. And we can't be relying on second-year Jordan Poole. All right, boys, and everyone who watched. Thank you all for watching. Shout out to all the people that commented, including Will Hoffman, Bobby, my dad, even Zach Perez. I didn't shout him out real quick, but Zach said yo, so I'll say hello to my buddy Zach. Who, hey, we're going to Orlando all with each other in a couple weeks.
Wait till we get Perez on the Backcourt Press podcast in Orlando.
Oh yeah, man,
going on. We'll be doing one when we're in Orlando.
We will be. That is in 2 weeks, boys. I will be home in a week when you will see me in my normal setup. It's been really, really fun. We're finally back on the podcast grind now that summer has officially started for both of us. I still have my biggest race of the year, so I probably will not be able to do one for the rest of this week up until Sunday when I go home, due to the fact that if you ever want to tune in, I will be racing in the college rowing national championship, the IRA national championship. Under Temple University. You can see the sweatshirt. I'll keep people updated on that if anyone's watching. But thank you all for tuning in. It's been really fun today. It's Backcourt Press. Be sure to follow us on Instagram. We've been keeping our series up, posting very, very pretty much daily with all our NBA content. So if you're not finding us here, you're finding us over there. And obviously, shout out to my co-host Zach Vinci for all the great NBA in-depth analysis. And sooner or later, we will be getting an actual NBA analyst named Danny Thompson on the show. He wants to test our 90s knowledge. So I said I will take a step back, and I see Zach rubbing his hands because of the fact that he knows his 90s, and it'll be a lot of fun to talk 90s basketball with an analyst.
And shout out Phil Mickelson.
Fair. That's a good shout out. Thank you all for watching. It's been fun. This has been Backcourt Press, and we will catch you guys in the next time.